Thank you so much for joining us today at Christpoint Church. We want you to know we're real people living real lives, serving a real God. We hope that you enjoy today's sermon by our lead pastor, Steve Qualls. Welcome home.
Could we be seen again? Now I'm throwing a question out and I'm going to answer it. Could we be seen again, the light that guided the wise men 700 miles from their home to Bethlehem 2,000 years ago-ish? Could we be seeing that? So here's my answer to that question. Do I think that this is the actual star that they saw in the sky and that they followed? Do I believe that star? Now you got to realize the star moved, because remember in the Word it says that it came to and it stopped and it rested and it quit moving over Bethlehem and they knew where they were there. So is this the star that moved? Is this the star that stopped over Bethlehem? I'm going to tell you, I don't know. I have no way of knowing. But from the time, I'm going to give you some pros and cons as to why this has some, and I'm going to get into the sermon. I'm going to give you some pros and cons as to why this has some validity and why maybe it doesn't. From the time that they first saw these planets and these stars align, from the time that it started to the time that it stopped was exactly 9 months. So, if a virgin were to have been become pregnant by the Holy Spirit in the name of Mary, it would take 9 months for that child, Jesus, to be born, and just so happens that this phenomenon lasted for 9 months. That's how long it takes for a baby to be born. I don't know if you're figuring that up. I just happen to know that. So, and yes, so here's another thing. Jupiter appears to move in the sky. Now, I watched a lengthy thing on this just to make sure I knew what I was talking about. So I'm like, okay, what about the star moving? Well, Jupiter appears to move in the night sky because we're viewing it from a moving platform called Earth. So it appears to move. So it has the appearance that it moves. So all of this is proven. All this is proven by astronomers, scientists, astrophysicists, all this. Even down to the date of December 25th, 2 BC. So all the way down to December 25th. So what's my answer to the question you ask? I'm going to say I'm not sure, but I'm going to say this. This is what I do know. What do you think? So Pastor, what do you think? I'm going to say I don't think that's accurate. I'm going to say I don't think that's the star, because I don't think that anything we can explain away is a miracle. I don't think that anything we can put an explanation to or can happen again. So I don't know. Maybe it does. I don't know. Maybe God aligned it perfectly, but I don't think there's an explanation. I think God gave us supernatural light. And I think that supernatural light guided those men. And do I think that they did some studies on it? Yes. Do I think these were Jewish men? More than likely. Do I think that they were leftovers basically from the exile? Yes. Daniel's trainees? Yes. Do I think that? Do I think that they've been looking for the promised Messiah? Yes. So let me just explain something to you. 6,000 years ago, the title sermon is Let There Be Light. So let's look at this. 6,000 years ago, God spoke light into a darkened world. Now, the very first thing that God ever said in the Bible, recorded. Now, we don't know if it's the first thing He's ever said, but we do know the first thing that's recorded in the Bible that we carry with us is in Genesis, and it's in chapter 1, and He don't go but just 3 verses and He starts talking. So the earth was void and without form, and the Spirit of the Lord hovered over the deep, and darkness covered the earth. And God said, "Let there be light." So God spoke light. He spoke light. Now let me just say this to make sure that we understand who God is. God spoke everything into being except you and me. When it come to you and me, He got down, got His hands dirty, and made us. So He puts more love and more time and more effort into you and I than He does into everything else. He spoke light into existence. So the light as we know it. He is the light. We'll look at that. But He spoke the light that we see and the light that illuminates our firmament. He spoke that into existence. So 6,000 years ago, there was no light. The earth was without form and was void. That means it was void of any shape or any kind of activity or anything, and nothing can live in the darkness. And God said the first thing we have to have in order to move forward is we have to have the light. So don't get the cart before the horse. The very first thing that we need is the salvation of Jesus. He says, I am the light of the world. So don't get the cart before the horse. Don't get the walk of salvation before the prayer of salvation. Don't try to walk in victory unless we have received victory first. So that was 6,000 years ago. So 4,000 years ago, darkness covered the earth again. Now this time, it was because of something we did. Darkness covered the earth again, and it was because of sin. And his sin was so bad that God couldn't find even two families to save. He found one family, and he had this guy Noah build a boat that it took him 6 lifetimes to build. So that was 4,000 years ago. So darkness covered the earth because of sin in the form of clouds, in the form of floodwaters. So God sent something out through Noah. Noah took a dove, and he sent that dove out. And the dove went out, and it's recorded in Genesis chapter 8, verse 11. And the dove came back to him in the evening. And behold, this time, he'd already done this before. And behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. And Moses knew that the waters, and let's just put parentheses around the word, the darkness had subsided from the earth. Because when you're out on a boat, and there's nobody else alive on the entire face of the earth, there is no alone like that. There's no isolation like that. There's nothing that can prepare you for that. And we think that we've went through a season to where we've been isolated. This family was isolated. Now, I can almost be willing to say the persecution they went through before they were isolated, this might have been a welcome change. So anyway, Moses knew, the word says, that the waters, and we'll just say the darkness, had subsided because the dove brought back proof of light. That branch could not grow unless it wasn't covered anymore by darkness, wasn't covered anymore by water, and unless light had permeated and began to flourish again. So that was 6,000. That was 4,000 years ago. Now 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, God didn't speak light. He didn't send a bird. He didn't think that way. He came himself. He came himself. He did this. He did this on his own free will. He brought light into a darkened world. The world was dark. The world was... Do you realize that at the point when Jesus came, there was a silence of 400 years of the Lord? And you talk about darkness, there was no voice, no message, nothing recorded. There was what they call basically the silent years, 400 and something years. Nothing was being said, and Jesus broke that with light. So let me show you what that looks like in Matthew chapter 2, verse 9. And behold, let's go back to the star again. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. So it came to rest over the place where the child was. The shortest day of the year is this week. So this is what I kind of want to put us in the grand scheme of things. The shortest day of the year is tomorrow. The darkest day of the year is tomorrow. The darkest week of the year is right now. It's Christmas. Christmas comes at the darkest of every year. Christmas is this week. I don't know if you guys know that. Some of you guys, when I say guys, I mean all of you men, have not shopped for anything. Because it's not Christmas Eve yet, and you don't have to, right? So, and most of the women and your wives have everything finished. So at this point, you're all finished, but your husbands, you guys haven't shopped for anything. So that that's happening this week. So you better dig in your pocket, get out some dollars, because you're about to have to spend some money. So Christmas is this week. Don't miss it. So the birth of Jesus is celebrated on this day every year. Every year. There's none of us that can go back far enough to remember when this was not celebrated. So this day is celebrated every week. Did you know that Jesus came to this earth? I just want us to grab our minds around it. Did we ever stop to think that Jesus came to this earth as light? He even speaks of himself as being the light during the darkest period of time. The light comes at the darkest time. Do you know what happens after tomorrow? The days start getting longer by about a minute every day. 35, 45 seconds, a minute, every day. And you know, by the time we get to the end of January, the days are almost a whole 30 minutes longer. So, all of a sudden, at our darkest time, the light comes. So, God has always brought light when we needed it the most. He's not going to fail to bring us light when we need it. See, the birth of Jesus is celebrated every year. Now, I want to tell you, the same week, every year, the birth of Jesus is celebrated, and shame on us if we celebrate Santa. Shame on us if we celebrate giving, if we celebrate trees, if we celebrate decorations, if we celebrate the economics of the seasons. Shame on us if we don't slow ourselves down and focus on Jesus for a little bit. See, during the darkest time, 2,000 years ago, the Magi followed the star to the light. See, the star wasn't the light. The star was only a guide to the light. So Jesus illuminated the darkness by being born. I don't know if you know it, but he split time in half. If you're watching or viewing, if you say, "Well, I don't believe in Jesus," well, your time is set by Jesus. So I don't know, if you get up and you say today is December 20th, 2020, it's because Jesus made that time happen. He split it in half, and you are living in a season that is, in a time that has been determined by His birth. So Jesus illuminated all of mankind, the darkness for all of mankind. God placed stars and planets and aligned them, or stars and planets and moons. He placed them in the skies. Now, I'm going to show you something that might blow your mind. It's pretty cool. These are placed there by God for guidance, to guide us, to point us to the light. God never put stars in the galaxies for us to worship. He never placed them out there for us to worship. They have no power over your future. If you're reading your horoscope, I'm sorry, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. They have no power over. The only one that has power over your future is Jesus, the light. All these things in the sky ever do is point us to light, to the light. They are just illuminations of Him. So they have no power over your personality, over your moods, over how you react. Well, I'm Virgo. Yeah, I'm a Sag. I don't know. I don't keep up with it. I just remember in movies that I'm a Virgo. I don't like confrontation. You don't like confrontation because it's the DNA that God put in you, not because you're aligned with some star. So they are placed there by God for us to use. That's why they're placed there. And I'm going to show you what the Word says. Psalms 19, verses 1 and 2. I want you to notice something. The heavens proclaim the glory of God. The skies display His craftsmanship. Verse 2, day after day they continue to speak, and night after night they make Him known. So the heavens proclaim the glory of God. The skies display His craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak, and night after night to make Him known. They are there to glorify the Lord. So I want to show you something. Isaiah 40:26. I want to read this one from the New Living Translation. Look up into the heavens, and who created all the stars? He brings them out like an army, one after another, calling each one by its name. Our Lord, who made you and me, who pierced the darkness to give us an avenue for our sins to be forgiven, to penetrate light, to penetrate our darkness and our dark hearts. You know what? This is the same God that placed every star in the sky and names each and every one of them. Now, I don't know if you know the vastness of this, but do you know that we live in a solar system, a galaxy system called the Milky Way? So it's made up of billions of stars. Do you know that there are over 100 billion galaxies just like ours? Do you know that there are over 100 billion stars in each one of those galaxies? And my God is the one that laid them there, placed them there, hung them on nothing, and gave them a name. So when we look at the vastness of everything out there, and God still is so intimate with me that He cares about my very intimate details of my life, yes, He does. The one that named every one of those stars by the billions. So when we get to thinking about maybe how small God is, I think we need to back up and realize how big God is. Because my God is the God that placed these stars in the sky by the billions and named all of them. So what can He do in my life? What can He take care of? So God names them all and He remembers them all. He don't just forget this. It's not something that He forgets. He's not a God that can forget. So notice something with me. In creation, darkness covered the earth. That's 6,000 years ago. And God created light to permeate it, to cover it. In the times of Noah, when sin had darkened the light and man had created his own darkness, God brought new life. When Jesus was born, darkness once again covered the earth. And Jesus was born. He was the light, and it pierced the darkness. It ran the darkness away. I don't know if you know, but there's no battle between light and darkness. There's no battle between good and evil. You know, let me just give you an example of that. When you walk into a room and you switch on a light, there's no battle that goes on between those two. The darkness, there's no conflict. When you switch on the light, the darkness is gone like that. So remember, the armor, the last few weeks, the devil works and he fights and his schemes are in the darkness. So if we want to win battles, we flip on the light, just like that, and he's gone, just like that. So Jesus was born to pierce that darkness with His light. Now, here we are in 2020. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. When we always kind of just get excited about moving into the new vision for the new year, we haven't even talked about that this year. Because we went in, well, not because of this, but we went into 2020. 2020 is vision. 2020 is the year of vision. You had no idea how many churches and how many leaderships, and how many things you could read out there a year ago to this date. 2020, the year of vision. Well, you didn't see this coming, did you? None of us saw this coming. And you know what my wife said? She didn't say, this is a year of vision. She said, God just spoke to my spirit and said, this is it. This is it. Now, I'm going to tell you something. When we hear God say this is it, that means people are going to be lined up down the streets to get into our churches, especially this one. People are going to be lined up. People are going to be at the altars by the thousands because this is it. You know what God may be saying? Your it may not be exactly the picture that my it is. This may be the time when the church gets to be the church. This may be a time to where I start separating the wheat from the chaff. This may be the time to where, you know what? I don't know if you know this. If you've been around any time you do, 32% of the church population in America is gone. Through COVID, they couldn't hack it. So you know what? This may be it. You know, because when it comes harvest time, we're not going to be able to sell our goods if it's only chaff. Only the wheat is worth anything. So you know what? Everybody's worth something, but if they're not going to get on board, they're going to get left behind. So we are once again in 2020, we're once again under heavy darkness. Here we are. We find ourselves, and you know what? It just doesn't seem like it wants to go away. Sin has covered the light. We don't know what to believe, what to listen to. We don't know what's truth and what's lies. We're in the darkest time. Not only are we in the darkest year, but we're in the darkest time of that darkest year. We're in the darkest month of that darkest year, and we are one day away from being the darkest day of that year. Emotionally, it is the darkest time of our lives. Now, does it compare to being on a boat, drifting aimlessly with no motor and no sail, and you're the only people left alive in the entire earth? No, it doesn't compare to that. But let me remind you that there is light. John chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus says, I'm just going to remind you of this. I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. Follow me and you won't walk in darkness. He says, I'm that light. You follow me and you won't walk in darkness. John chapter 1, verse 4, in Him was life, and that life was the light of the world. So in Him was life, and that life was the light of the world. 1 John 1:5. God is light, and in Him there is no darkness. Are we starting to get the hint? Because God didn't give us the Bible written, the Logos Word, just so we can just lay it in the corner and blow the dust off of it once in a while. He didn't put the Word in written form for us never to read. And He didn't say things just so He could sell a thicker Bible. It matters. Every word has intent. Every word has power. God is light, 1 John 1:5. In Him there is no darkness. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. You are the light of the world. You are. You are a city on a hill that cannot be hidden. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 6. Let light shine out of darkness. Made His light to shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory. In Romans 13:12. The night is far gone. See, let me explain. This scripture's been on my heart for 20 years. The night is far gone. Because I've often wondered why we would have an armor of God and then we would also have an armor of light. So the night is far gone. See, let me explain something to you. We don't wear, please, I'm telling you, we have a strict dress code at Christpoint Church where something or somebody will notice. You're not going to get up and wear your night clothes to church on Sunday morning. You're not going to get up and wear your pajamas to work. Right now you kind of do, but you're not going to do that. See, the night is far gone, the day is at hand, so let us cast off the works of darkness. In order to cast off the works of darkness, we've got to put on the armor of light. So let us cast off. The night is far gone. The day is at hand. You know what? That means that we can see the sun starting to rise. That means the darkness is about as gone as it can be. At this point, when I'm just going to challenge you in the morning to be up at 5 o'clock, view that night sky in the southwestern sky. I want you to see that that light. And I want you to realize you can't stop the rising of the sun. You can't stop it. God can, but you can't. So here's the thing. When God sets in motion for the light to come, we can't stop that. The night is far gone. The day is at hand. So let us cast off the works of darkness. In other words, put your clothes on. Get yourself ready. Get up. Get yourself ready. Brush your teeth. Comb your hair. Put a little good smelling stuff on yourself. And let's get ready. Because what's about to happen, we have to have our armor of light on. He says, put on the armor of light. Now, do you realize that light is understanding? So put on the armor of light and understand who is illuminating our very atmosphere. Understand where we're standing, who we're standing in, and who is king of our lives. We don't act in the day like we do in the darkness. We don't dress in the day like we do in the darkness. And it's time to cast off what keeps the darkness over us. It's time to put on the armor of light. It's time to understand that role. As a child of the King, we simply have to understand that role. It's no coincidence that God came down as a child, threatened at His birth, threatened to be killed, to bring light into this darkness at the darkest time of the year. Every year we celebrate it. So don't let the darkness prevail. There is light. Despite the disease, there is light. Despite elections, there is light. Despite depression, there is light. You know, we need to encourage people because they're depressed right now. Despite depression, there's light. Despite job issues and uncertainties, there is light. Despite arguments that we see all around us and disagreements all around us, there is light. Despite loneliness, there is light. And it's the only thing that's going to permeate that darkness. Despite ourselves and all our attempts to draw to the darkness, trust me, the Lord knows us, and He knows that we desperately long to just gravitate right back to that nastiness of darkness because it's comfort for us. Despite every attempt that we make to draw to the darkness, there is light. Jesus said, I am that light. I am the light of the world. We must choose to see it. We've got to choose to see it. So I want to ask you this. During this darkest time of the year, God is God no matter what we think. He is God. But here's the question, is He God of my life? Because He's God, and all things work together for good for those who love Him, are called according to His purpose. And He's getting us through it. And you know what? There are principalities and authorities and rulers and cosmic powers. They are trying their best to defeat us in every walk of life, in every battle that we face. But you know what? The light is what prevails. Hello again, and thank you for tuning in. I pray that today's sermon has spoken to your heart and has ministered to you well. We just want you to know that we have two locations, one at our Sparta campus, our main campus at Sparta on the square in Sparta, and our second campus is at Smithfield behind Ace Hardware. And we would love for you to call Christpoint Church your church home. And if you're viewing this and you can't get in to church, and you feel like you want to be a part of the church, then you can always be a part of the church. Just drop us a note and let us know that you enjoy being on board with us. And if you'd like to give and be a part of the ministry, then you can do that by just sending a check to one of the locations at 614 Murphy Street, Smithfield, 13 Liberty Square in Sparta, and we'll get you on the road. We just love you so much. And you can download the Christpoint Church of Tennessee app, and you can give online. So we are real people. We're living real lives, and we're serving a real God. And we just want to tell everyone, welcome home. We're so glad that you tuned in with us. Welcome home.